So thank you all for having me. Let's see. The Cybersecurity Act was adopted in April 2019. In December 2020, the European Commission announced the new EU cybersecurity strategy and new rules to make physical and digital critical entities more resilient. Legislation, however, takes time. Adding, however, requirements to existing legislation can be a fast track. The RED Delegated Act was published in January 2022 and can be seen as a fast track. I will talk about RED, the CRA, and I will mention a little bit of about the FCC Cyber Trust Mark. That last piece is just to get an example to what is happening in other regions. Before we start, just a few words about Intertek. With about 44,000 employees in more than 1,000 labs and offices around the world, we have a pretty good coverage for our ATIC solutions. Intertek's cybersecurity capabilities are available from several locations across the globe, and these are provided by our companies, the Intertek companies, EWA Canada, Acumen Security, and NTA. Our primary cybersecurity capabilities are consumer IoT, industrial IoT, medical devices, payment device testing, common criteria, and then we have our own proprietary cyber assured program. Okay, first, a high-level orientation on the EU roadmap to IoT cybersecurity compliance. The CRA was adopted a month ago and is expected to be properly signed and published in the EU's official journal soon. Next stop will be the RED delegated regulation in effect from 1st of August next year. In Q3 2026, the CRA incident reporting requirements will apply, and shortly after, accompanied by the CRA vulnerability handling requirements. A year after that, CRA should be fully implemented. And considering 3 years is not a very long time to get compliant, and even worse, the 8th month until August 1st will probably pass rather quickly. RED is a European Union directive that sets out the technical requirements for radio equipment to ensure that it is safe, efficient, and does not interfere with other radio equipment. It covers a wide range of equipment, including radios, mobile phones, and other wireless communication devices. If a non-radio product is integrated with a radio product, the entire product becomes a radio product under the RED. The RED has been in effect since 2014 and replaces the previous EU directive, the Radio and Telecommunications Terminal Equipment Directive. Its aim is to provide greater consistency in regulatory requirements for radio equipment throughout the EU. The existing RED is covering safety and health and EMC in the articles 3.1a and b, and the radio requirements in Article 3.2. The new delegated regulation under the RED called EU 2022-30 introduces several additions to the existing directive. And the main change would be the introduction of cybersecurity requirements. These requirements are commonly referenced to as Article 3.3 D, E, and F of the RED. Cybersecurity requirements are divided into 3 parts, the D, E, and F, and they are all applicable to equipment with radio, and that's for all 3 of these. So the first one, network protection, is about protecting the network from security overload and cybersecurity related stuff to the network. And then E is about protection of personal data and privacy. And there is one special thing about the E, because that one also applies to children's connected children equipment, toys, wearable electronics, even though they are not maybe connected to the internet. So as long as they are having a wireless connectivity, regardless if it's connected to internet or not, they are applicable to the E. And then you have the last one, protection from fraud. That's when you have devices that are capable of processing monetary value, like actual money or digital currency or things like that. I have noted down here, we have the EN 18031 series of standards are specifically put together for the additional cybersecurity requirements. But while published in August 2024, it did not make it to the official journal, and thus there are no harmonized standard yet. On the right-hand side, there are some question marks, and that is to illustrate that the European Council has not provided clarification on, for example, the definition of indirectly connected to the internet. That means there is some ambiguity and on applicability for certain types of technology, such as Bluetooth and Zigbee. So it's even more important for the manufacturers to conduct their risk assessment of their product to understand the applicability of these requirements. Okay, so what steps to take? Currently, self-declaration is not an option because of the non-harmonized standard. We suggest the manufacturer to identify and address cybersecurity vulnerabilities and cyber risks within your products. Do it as early as possible and maintain that throughout the product lifecycle. There is actually when it comes to risk assessments, there is a good guidance from ETSI, which is called the ETSI TR 103935, which helps you on the basics on the risk assessment path. The next step would be for you to select the standard appropriate for you. Maybe you already have a IEC 62443 implementation and wants to continue with that series of standards. However, if you don't go with the intended standard, the 18031, there are gaps, but they are quite clearly defined in the 18031, so you can go there for help. Once you have selected the standard, you need to prepare the technical documentation. Then after that, we suggest begin testing early. The 4 to 6 weeks estimate requires the documentation to be flawless together with the cyber risk assessment. It will normally take the manufacturer 1 to 2 months to be able to get the documentation ready. An estimate from when the manufacturers start preparing the technical documentation to finishing with the whole certification process is likely to take 3 to 4 months. It's normally quite time-consuming to get all the technical details properly documented and then do all the, actually in this case, then third-party testing. When or if the testing is completed with a passing score, you can then take the report and the supporting documents to a notified body for review, and if the notified body finds the essential requirements met, then they will be able to issue an EU type examination certificate. Currently, the 3 state-of-the-art standards. In 18031, there is also mapping provided for the IEC 62443-4-2 and the ETSI EN 303645. There are also mapping done for or against the if you have a CESIP evaluation of connected platforms. But do consider that fulfillment of, for example, the IEC 62443-4-2 requirements even if it's documented by a certificate. That in itself does not provide conformity to the requirements in the EN 18031 or 2 or 3. It might seem overwhelming. If you need help, we provide services supporting every stage of the RED compliance journey. The Cyber Resiliency Act. The objective with the is to strengthening the cybersecurity posture, increase consumer trust, and EU-wide regulatory harmonization. All products with digital elements connected to the internet are in scope for the CRA. Key requirements are both process-related and device-related. And there are also some exceptions. For example, medical devices, which are governed by their own regulations. We have an interesting piece here, like with the GDPR, we have penalties. So you can get fined, you can get product recalls, or even withdrawal from the EU market if you don't adhere to the CRA requirements. So further understanding the essential requirements, one important piece is security by design. That's required throughout the whole life cycle, from planning, development to production. There are incident reporting obligations. We have vulnerability handling requirements. And then you have the device, so to say, security requirements, the normal stuff you build into your products. Products under the CRA are classified from, you have baseline products, easy everyday stuff like smart speakers and connected toys. And then you have the important products category and the critical products category. The important products category is divided in type 1 and type 2. You see a timeline at the bottom right here that's showing the phased implementation of the CRA. It's dependent on when it gets published in the official journal, and then there are a certain amount of months before these different portions of the CRA kicks in. The necessary guidance is not available, and that's being worked on by the Sensenelec. In this slide, we look at the important class 1 and important class 2 and the critical products. Depending on the product class, there are different options for conformity assessment. This is a somewhat simplified illustration to give an idea about the different paths. So you can go the internal assessment with, if there were a harmonized standard, it might be, or the notified body involvement for a type examination, or you can use any of the existing or coming cybersecurity certification schemes. And as of today, we have one, the EUCC, coming into play in February 27 next year. Don't know if I mentioned that, but the baseline products, the non-critical one, they only need self-declaration. That's quite an important distinction. So where to start? With the CRA, similar to RED, start with developing your vulnerability handling procedures. Continue with incorporate security by design if it's not already there. Conduct regular security reviews of the product, and conduct a gap assessment. And this is in preparation for the CRA, so this is not like the finish line. The harmonized standards for CRA are under development. The standardization request to Sensenelec includes 41 deliverables, 2 horizontal process standards, 13 horizontal essential requirements, and another 26 vertical standards. That's quite a lot more than we had for the RED directive recently. So it will be interesting to see how that works out. And the actual number of deliverables will obviously might change during the process depending on what proposed solutions the working group will come up with. We also see some possible candidates for the standards, and then we have the already today state-of-the-art standards, the 303645, the 6244341, which is for about secure product development, and then the 62443-4-2. I mentioned that before. The EUCC being effective from February next year is a certification scheme possible to use for that you comply with the CRA. The requirements mapping on the right is more of an example. It's not a complete list. There is a list published by ENISA, which do the mapping from these examples and also for other standards like common criteria. So just brought that up as an information for further reading. The FCC Cyber Trust Mark. FCC Cyber Trust Mark for the US. The scope is consumer smart devices. It's taking another approach, a little slightly different one than we have in the EU. It's a voluntary cybersecurity labeling program for internet-enabled devices. This involves third-party assessment. The idea behind is similar hours for RED, and the idea is to help consumers make informed purchasing decisions, differentiate trustworthy products in the marketplace, and create incentives for manufacturers to meet higher cybersecurity standards. Please also consider this initiative is only intended for consumer products. So while in the RED and CRA, we are including a much broader scope of products. I've also heard that the US and the EU are in discussions to work together on achieving mutual recognition between the EU and the CRA and the Cyber Trust Mark. But probably because of the differences, it might not be that easy. But time will tell. The Cyber Trust Mark is expected to be launched this end of this year. I think it will be pushed till next year, but it's anyway, it's something that's on the agenda right now. So some key takeaways from the regulatory landscape. RED timeline is really tight, and in the absence of harmonized standards, a notified body involvement is required. The CRA applies to all connected products with digital elements. And yeah, as I mentioned, the US Cyber Trust Mark is just one example from outside of the EU.
Questions?
So there are a lot of very interesting stuff here. And I know that a lot of companies in the audience here have a mix of their own developed products, as well as a mix of maybe ODMs, buying ODM products.
Yes.
And rebranding and stuff. Can you elaborate a little bit what regards this RED and CRA when you have devices, white label devices or ODM devices what do you have to do?
For the radio directive, if you, for example, have your product and then you incorporate chipsets or other products within your product, it's still your responsibility to be RED compliant. So either you have some sort of proof or you need to test it yourself. And as I mentioned in the presentation as well, if you have like a non-radio product and combine it with a radio module or radio product, depending on how you do it, the whole product will become a radio product. So it will then be in scope for the directive.
So follow-up question to that. There are part of for example, RED, you mentioned that it's not only the device, but also process related. You need to make sure that on a timely manner, make sure that you inform your customers about identified issues and that you're resolving them, etc.
Yes.
And that you could argue for that would be extremely hard to do when you have an ODM product developed by someone 3 years ago in Asia, and you need them to monitor all the critical information regarding bugs, etc., and you need someone to make sure that they are addressed.
Yes, but maybe one of the solutions could be to have an SBOM where you have the details of the product, what components it's built on, and so you have like third-party components and all the coding document in a library, and then you do searches based on that. And either way, you can't blame the other guy who you bought it from.
Exactly. So for everyone, a takeaway for everyone then, that if you have an ODM device, you need to make sure that there are processes in place so that your device that you are selling under your brand are cyber secure, that it continues to be compliant.
Oh yes, regardless of where you get your components.
Yeah.
Okay, so this might be a very tough question to answer, but anyway, so based on your experience today, how many products that you see today do you think would pass RED and CRA? Of course, it's difficult because you need to do the assessments, etc. But if you just look on what you believe today at Intertek, how many do you think would pass this today?
Oh, I think most of the products eventually pass. It's more a question about what changes do you need today to make to either the software or the hardware. But so that was a lame question answer. I mean, so I can't give you an estimate. So I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Most of the products pass eventually.
Yeah, and that's sort of the, of course, because you go back, you do another iteration, but considering quite tight timeline, and we heard in the lab tour that here you consider like 18 months to develop a product, and you don't have those processes in place today. Now you have to go spend half a year maybe trying to get the process in place. You develop a new product. You're up at 24 months, so it's quite tight.
I would say for the Cyber Resiliency Act, that's it's really time to start now. If you will have time to if you will be able to get it in place. But for the radio directive, it's more a focus on the device. So I wouldn't say it's that hard on the process side on the RED as it is on the CRA. On the other hand, it's soon August, so you have other issues with changing your product lines and updating whatever you plan to sell in August or actually after August.
Thanks.
So just a question a little bit about the RED and CRA. So for RED, I've learned that you could actually design your product in a way that it's not within the scope. For example, if I add a module which is easy to remove, I'm no longer in RED. So I could basically use this to get rid of the cybersecurity criteria that I need to fulfill for RED, I guess. Is there anything similar in CRA that that you can avoid this regulation?
Interesting. First of all, I can confirm what you say about the RED. It's correct. Yeah, if you have a easily removable communication device, then the product is out of scope. So yeah, that's one way of get rid of that problem. But if you want to continue to sell your products when CRA kicks in, that's not so easy. And I haven't deep dived into it. I haven't found any similar kind of loopholes in the CRA.
There's no guidance coming either.
There will be, but they are not out yet.
All right. Yeah. So just another question also about the classification. So I guess, is there clear, like, how do I know the classification of my product?
It's a lot more clear than in the presentation.
Okay.
I just simplified it because it's like a huge list of examples. So it's it's available. You can have a look at it if you want to.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
Just thinking about this IoT, where Ericsson made a projection about, I don't remember, 5 billion devices, 50 billion devices or whatever. And there are many devices on the market today. Will they also be subject to this regulation?
No, it's not retroactive. So
Not
it's,
retroactive.
For the radio directive, it's for products placed on the market after August 1st.
Okay, including the CRA.
The CRA is almost 3 years away. I need to have a closer look, but and it's not been published yet, so I don't really have the latest.
Okay, so essentially it means that there will be a lot of companies needing to do a lot of things in a very short time.
Yes.
And you will need to examine those, you and your colleagues in the business. Are there resources enough to do all these certifications?
Most likely not.
Okay.
There will be a queue.
There will be a queue.
Unless, of course, the Commission agrees to decide on a harmonized standard.
Okay.
So at the moment, there are question marks on the 18031, which prohibit it from being put on the OJ. So if that could be sorted out somehow and published soon, then there will be maybe a little bit easier. But as for the time being, there are the notified body road that is mandatory.
Okay. So it will be a long line and
yes, probably.
some priorities needs to be made, I guess.
Guess so.
Okay, thank you.